to be one of the last people on Earth.
But something is coming to get them. A higher degree in terror.
This is Kurt Rector from House of Death, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. And if you heard that, that was Tiger in the background, who's been locked away from all the Bics outside because he's too fat. Tiger is my cat, not my partner. Anyway, we're back on The Hysteria Continues, episode 243, and this time we're heading for Arts for Living Centre, where the students have to pay in sweat and blood and no one will live forever. Yes, we're covering Lucio Fulci's 1984 slash sort of Boogaloo Giallo mashup, Murderock. And we're joined by a friend of the show, and we're very excited to have him back with us, Gregory Burkhart. So, Gregory, how are you doing?
I'm old, but
aren't we all?
I'm doing well. Yeah, this past month or so has really reminded me how much older I am. But other than that, I'm hanging in there. I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, well, what better way to recapture our youth than donning a pair of leg warmers and doing high kicks and leotard splits and whatever?
I'm wearing mine right now.
Well, I'm sure you are, and I dread to think what Eric's got on.
I have pants.
Do you? Do they have a little hole cut in the back of them, like one lady's outfit in Murderock when she's dancing, and you can see her?
Yes, I know that. I'm familiar with the outfit you speak. Well, let's just say yeah to that.
Well, you could always go and get a pair of scissors and recreate it, couldn't you?
I could, very easily.
Well, it's the mental image that keeps giving. So, and Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. We should also mention that Gregory hoisted this film upon us. It's a listener pick, so thank you, Gregory.
I'm so sorry.
I sincerely mean that, though, actually.
Oh, you do?
So,
okay.
Oh, yes. Also, I'd like to give a quick shout-out to our friends at the Remedial Film Class podcast. For the month of October, they're doing a fall break special each Wednesday starting on October 6th, and it will run through to Halloween. They're starting with the original Laurie Strode Halloween trilogy, which includes Halloween 2, and Halloween H2O. And they're also doing a What If Halloween Was an Anthology scenario, which will include Halloween, The Fog, and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And it sounds like a really fun idea, especially if you're a Jamie Lee Curtis fan. So just search for the Remedial Film Class podcast. They're pretty much anywhere you catch your pods. I told them I'd give them a shout out, so there you go.
We should also mention, unfortunately, dear Nathan is not with us tonight due to unforeseen circumstances, but he would be sure to be joining us again in, for the next episode, I'm sure. So,
well, he wants to be because it's his pick.
He better be, yeah, because if we're not doing it, if he's not around, put it that way.
I've been tasked with doing my best Nathan impersonation and announcing that at the end of the show, by the way, so...
We should also say, Gregory, last time you were on, before we came on air, that sounds terrible, but before we started the show, we mentioned the last time you joined us was for the Maniac episode, which I think was 117, was it? If you want to listen back. And you were saying, it's a couple of years ago, but in fact it was 5.5 years ago. We are all officially the dinosaurs of podcasting. Let's hope that asteroid holds off a little while longer so we get the chance to discuss this glorious slice of 1984. But before we do that, we'll have a quick chat about what we're watching recently. So, Gregory, is there anything you've seen of late you want to tell us about?
Lately, I've been really wrapped up in moving. My girlfriend and I are relocating, but on breaks, I've had a chance to try to be caught up. And I think probably the one that stands out among the recently seen of mine is a movie called The Empty Man, which really got, it really got passed over because not only just did it get lost in the COVID business, but it also was, I think it was Fox's last actual official release under the 20th Century Fox banner before they went all Disney on us. And the promotional campaign made me kind of not want to see it because they made it look like your standard like creepypasta style Slender Man, I don't know, Bye Bye Man, Poo Poo Caca Man, whatever. And it's all of those are really getting tired. And I'm a creepypasta fan, but I was just like, really, not another one. But then I watched it, and it is so not anything like that, the way they promoted it. No wonder people kind of skipped it over. It's epic. I can't even begin to describe how amazing that movie was.
I've heard lots about this, and I've heard sort of varying takes on it. And I know it's one of those films that kind of sat on the shelf and all that kind of stuff. So I haven't seen it, but my interest was piqued recently, and it's a film that I've been meaning to get around to see. And I think you're right. It kind of after suffering through Slender Man, and actually seeing the trailer for that at the cinema, which was 10 times gorier than the actual film turned out to be, because they completely cut it for so suitable 12-year-olds. And so The Empty Man, it kind of looked, I could see why possibly it was mispromoted, but it's not one I've seen yet. The only other thing that put me off slightly was that isn't it kind of got like a 12-hour running time? Well, not quite that, but isn't it quite a long film?
It's nearly 2.5 hours, if I remember correctly. It's actually very episodic. It's separated into chapters, but it has a link. There's a 20-minute prologue before the title even shows up on the screen, but it literally covers, it goes all the way from like the Himalayas to, a Midwestern American town. And it's everything from, huge global conspiracies to cults to, demonic type of, not really possession, but well, yeah, there is even a possession aspect. It's a big sort of crazy quilt, and it doesn't all entirely work, but there's a scene about 2/3 of the way through that is one of the creepiest scenes I've seen in a movie, period. It's a scene that takes place in a forest at night, and I'll just say that much. I was like, my jaw was on the floor. That scene alone makes it worth watching.
Okay, well, let's consider my curiosity properly piqued. So, Erik, have you seen it, or have you heard of it?
No, and no.
I will try and watch it before we do the next show. As a promise. What about you, Joseph?
No, I've never heard of it. It sounds intriguing, but I am a little put off by the runtime. But I recently watched The Lighthouse, which was fairly long, and I enjoyed that. So we'll see.
Okay, all right. Anything else, Gregory?
Nothing as far as films that I've really stayed that closely up on, but I have started watching a couple of series. There's a Netflix series now called Brand New Cherry Flavor, which is, if you're into surreal, extreme horror, body horror, and just even just it's set in the I think about the early 90s, and it's based on a book, but which I have not read, but just the first couple of episodes alone are just, it's like nothing I've ever seen, horror wise on television. It's pretty amazing. It's really gruesome too, but it's the story's interesting and the actors are really good.
I've seen the first episode, which I quite enjoyed. I haven't seen any of the others, but did you notice who the music that played out the final song?
Ooh, was it Susie and the Banshees?
Oh, it was actually, yes. I'm sure maybe Toya appears at some point in one of the other episodes.
She will. You can guarantee it.
Well, because of her and her husband's video series that they've been doing, they're getting a lot of global attention now. They're becoming a viral sensation. So
yeah, Justin,
she's going to be a lot better known to people that might not have been familiar with her before.
She can join the likes of the Paul brothers, Jake and Logan, in all their splendor.
She's the new Cash Me Outside, which is great.
She's the new what?
Look it up, Erik. Erik and Joseph, I know Erik has an aversion to TV series, but have you seen? I thought it was amazingly shot. It looks great, and it actually feels like it kind of captures a bit of that kind of 90s LA vibe quite sort of well. I thought it was quite well done. So I'm looking forward to watching a bit more of it. But Joseph and Erik, have you?
No, I have heard of it, but no, I haven't watched it.
Okay, and Joseph, I take that as a no.
Oh, well, I added it to my queue a few weeks ago, but I haven't watched it yet. It really sounds pretty intriguing. And the one thing I like about the Netflix series is that they're typically kind of they're kind of anthological, so it's just one story. You don't have to go through this like multiple seasons, and there's usually only like 8 to 10 episodes, so you kind of get through it really quickly. So I definitely am looking forward to checking that out.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And Gregory, you said there was another thing you'd started.
I think. Oh, that's right. I did watch. I haven't started the 10th season of American Horror Story proper, but I did watch the anthology series American Horror Stories, plural, and it was hit and miss, but there were a couple of good ones in there.
I've heard that from some people saying that it was I dip in and out of American Horror Story because sometimes I find it's just a bit all but the kitchen sink, and it's kind of a bit over the top, which sometimes is good, but sometimes when it's just like full on for 10 episodes, it can get a little bit wearying. But yeah, I heard some mixed reviews of the anthology series, and some people said it was a bit cheap looking. But you said there's a couple of gems in there.
Yes, there's an episode about a cursed film similar to Cigarette Burns or Antrim or one of those, but this one is screening in a drive-in, so everyone in attendance is driven insane by the film and becomes completely psychotic and homicidal. It's got Adrienne Barbeau in it as the owner of the theater, but she's a little underused. She needed a lot more screen time. Otherwise, that one I think was the most fun.
Okay, all right. Well, it's worth. We'll check. I'm sure I'll check those out. Thank you, Gregory. We'll come back to your thoughts shortly on the main feature. But Erik, how about you? Have you been seeing anything recently?
Well, Justin, I went to Chester Zoo on Monday, and I saw a rhinoceros do a huge plop right onto the ground, and it was brilliant, and probably one of the best things I've seen. It's up there with Halloween and Friday the 13th. It was so much fun. Okay. So I know that you're obviously back in the UK at the moment. You've been partaking in a few gin and tonics. I haven't had any today yet. But I did go to Chester Zoo, but no, this is in lieu of my recently seen because I haven't really been watching anything. Gregory speaking there about those Netflix series did remind me of something I had watched. I can't remember what the title of it was, but it's something to do with robots, and it's a short. It's a series of shorts on Netflix, and it's kind of a spin-off of the heavy metal movies or heavy metal magazine. And I'm trying desperately to find out what the name of it was here. But
I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the title.
That would be Love, Death, and Robots.
That's it, Love, Death, and Robots. So I watched 2 episodes of that, both of them very short. One of them was about 8 minutes, and the other one was about maybe 15. One of them was about it's a kind of a Pixar-style animation where a woman is menaced by one of those robotic vacuum cleaners, the circular ones that just sort of wander around your house. That one goes psycho, and it was great fun. It's done in a sort of comedic way, obviously, and it was good fun. The other one had Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it, who finds she moves into a house and finds a mini civilization living in her freezer. It reminded me of that Simpsons episode, Joseph, you'll know this, where Lisa, she has a tooth or something that's hit by lightning.
The Genesis tub. It was exactly like that, yeah, and it was good fun also. They're very light, but I thought they were kind of good fun. I've only seen 2 so far, but I surprised myself by actually watching a Netflix series, but as I said, the run times on them are very, very short, so that's probably why I've sort of stuck with it. But that's all I've seen, apart from the rhinoceros doing the big poo.
Okay, well, fair enough. How spectacular! So one for the memory banks there. So thank you, Erik. Joseph, how about you?
Well, for those people complaining that we don't get to the main feature soon enough, you're just gonna have to kiss my puckered butthole because I have 4 movies to talk about. First, I watched Uncut Gems, which is the Adam Sandler film that got all sorts of raves a few years back. I won't go into too much detail on this one since it's not a horror film, but I will say that it's a very unusual movie to review because it's kind of designed as a thriller, but it doesn't follow those typical thriller narratives as there's no close calls, there's like no dramatized threats or anything of that nature that you typically get from a thriller. What it does instead is it presents this Sandler character as this gambling addict who's he's constantly on the move trying to stay one step ahead of his gambling debts. And you have these characters at all times like talking over one another, and they're screaming and cursing. And if that sounds like I'm describing a certain Rob Zombie film, I guess that's kind of the point here. It's kind of the film version of an anxiety attack. It's like really noisy and unlikable and really ugly, but damn it if it isn't an exceptional piece of filmmaking, and it's really daring, and I really enjoyed it. And finally, who knew Adam Sandler of all people was this good of an actor? I mean, I can't recommend this to the casual moviegoer, but I would if you're like into that kind of daring filmmaking. It's a pretty cool experiment into the kind of 200-mile-an-hour world of gambling addiction. Very arresting. Have you guys seen this?
Yes.
You saw it? Okay, what did you think, Greg?
You definitely are dead on about the feeling of a panic attack, which I'm quite familiar with. So it was a little bit of a rough watch that way. But I'm not a huge Adam Sandler fan, but I think that this is the kind of character that he really actually can tackle pretty well. Just a complete garbage person, but fascinating to watch him melt down.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you don't really know what's going to happen, and you don't really like these characters at all, but you just want to see, how far that he'll go just to stay one step ahead of all these like people trying to get their money back from him. It's really crazy. Justin, Erik, have you guys seen this?
Not yet, no.
No, not. I know it is one on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, just expect a lot of noise if you do watch it, but it's pretty interesting filmmaking. The other one, I kind of dipped my toes back into the found footage genre, and I watched Area 51. I think it was a troubled production by the guys behind the first Paranormal Activity film, but this one starts great, and it's this sort of kamikaze mission into Area 51. It's told from like multiple cameras as these three guys come up with a plan to break into the Area 51 facility, and they hope to see some proof of alien life. So the first 45 minutes of this film is sort of like watching an entire season of Prison Break told in reverse, as the characters attempt to break into the structure, rather than out. And the fun is like kind of had in their plan, which includes like they trick these body heat cameras and these audio detectors, and they kind of zigzag across some security blind spots in the desert. And in the film's most suspenseful scene, they break into the home of an Area 51 employee to steal like an access card so they can get into this through some doors. I mean, it's really great stuff, and it's really unique, but then it kind of like when we get to Area 51, and I won't tell you if they make it inside or not, but when we get there, it's just like the film kind of lost me with a really tepid finale that kind of devolves into the usual alien movie cliches, but told with just enough of the jittery camera movements to kind of disguise some of the weak effects. So I really enjoyed the setup, as I typically kind of tend to do with a lot of these found footage films, but I think ultimately I gave up on this genre for the very fact that too few, really know how to provide a proper payoff, and I think Area 51 is kind of no exception to that. So, I mean, it's got a solid start, but the end result is just kind of a big fat so what. I'm assuming none of you guys have seen this one.
No.
Well, it's a few years old, isn't it now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it went into production around 2008 or 2009, but it didn't get released until like 2015. So it had some kind of troubled production. I mean, it's not that bad. It doesn't feel like it was in trouble, but it's just not that great. It's just not very memorable.
So yeah, I can't remember anything about it apart from lots of running around and like people looking panicked and shaky cam.
I mean, that's typically what found footage films are. But yeah, it's just I watched this. I have no real desire to go back to the found footage on this basis. So I guess we'll move ahead. Unless Greg, have you seen this one?
I have, and I am quite a found footage fan, but I had a problem with that one for about pretty much the same reason you did. It just didn't pay off on the build-up. But yeah. I agree that the way the guys use technology, different kind of video technologies and all that to infiltrate the place was pretty cool. But I was hoping for maybe more of a twist or something just surprising at the end. But it just kind of like it went straight to where I where I figured it was probably going to go. So, but it was okay.
Yeah. Erik, have you seen this one?
No, but I mean, I do like the Paranormal Activity series quite a lot, actually, for my sins. So I am intrigued. I didn't realize I'd seen it in passing on some streaming sites, but I overlooked it, thinking it might have been just some straight to streaming cheapie. But if it's got the Paranormal Activity people behind it, I might give it a whirl.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just, I don't know. I preferred the first half more than I did the second half. So anyway, I also, for some reason, decided to watch the Stepfather remake from 2009. I mean, it's pretty much the Stepfather beat for beat. It doesn't really offer anything new. But I mean, if you went into this and you'd never seen the original Stepfather, you might actually find it serviceable. It's just kind of glossy and just so bland and vanilla. But the one thing that surprised me about this film was Dylan Walsh in the stepfather role. I mean, he's no Terry O'Quinn, but he was actually pretty good. I mean, I would kind of liken him to like an understudy at a play he's going to be pretty good, but he's not going to be quite the real thing. I mean, that's one good thing I could say about the film, but otherwise it's just one of those kind of psycho type remakes. It's like, why do they bother? You didn't add anything new or anything interesting to something we've already seen done better. So what's the point, really? Erik, have you seen this one?
I have seen this one, but it's been a while. So all I can tell you is that I remember being pleasantly surprised by how watchable it was. So
yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's watchable, if nothing else. Greg, you seen this one?
Actually, no. I frankly I'm such a big fan of the original. I kind of just didn't want to go near a remake because I just didn't figure that there was any really good reason to remake it.
Yeah, that sounds about right there. Justin?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to wrap my brains. I probably have seen it, but I don't remember if I have, which is, unfortunately, as Greg was saying, it's one of those things about getting older. Having said that, there were so many generic kind of remakes around that time, weren't they? Like Prom Night, that sometimes it's trying to scrub things from a memory. But yeah, I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, so we'll just gloss over that. The last thing I watched was Summer of '84, which tells the story of 4 teenagers during the summer of 1984, and they suspect that a police officer, neighbor of theirs, may be this elusive serial killer who's been abducting and killing young boys. So this one plays out much like The Goonies with, I guess, true crime replacing that kind of search for sunken treasure. I was watching this and I started remembering a few scenes like I'd seen this before. And I immediately realized that I had started this about 2 years ago and I got distracted and then completely forgot all about it. Which is a shame because I ended up really, really enjoying this film and I wish I had finished it at the time. But if you grew up in the suburbs in the early to mid 80s, all of that youth stuff will strike a chord with you. You know, kind of playing Manhunt at night with your friends, sleeping in tree houses, spying on naked girls. All that stuff is checklisted here, and it's handled really well.
I did not do any of that stuff in my youth.
Well, I'm talking about American kids, so. Yeah, but anyway, all that stuff's handled really well, and there's a few minor anachronisms. But I didn't really matter. I really felt like this was 1984. The characters are all very likable, and you get involved in this kind of scheme they got going on to prove whether or not this cop character is a murderer, and it's done with a light touch, and you never really feel like anyone is in real danger, which kind of works for this sort of film. But then the film arrives at this about face that absolutely floored me, and any comfort you have with the movie up until that point is taken away from you and beaten mercilessly, and you're left thinking, well, that escalated quickly. This one really impressed me a lot. I was really drawn into this and really absorbed with it. It kind of flew under the radar. I mean, people talked about it for like a minute, and then it just kind of disappeared, but I think it's one, if you've not seen it, you should definitely at least give it a one-time cursory glance. It's well worth the I think it's like 100 minutes or so, something like that. It's well worth it though. It's a little long, but it's well worth it. Any of you guys seen this, Greg?
Yes, very good movie. And it totally it takes a hard left turn that I did not see coming.
Yeah.
That really, I mean, that changed. It really ups the stakes in a big way.
Yeah. It totally floored me. Eric, have you seen this one?
No.
Yeah, I feel like you may not enjoy it because I know you're not into that whole Stranger Things kind of vibe, and this does.
That's why I'm familiar with the thumbnail for it, because I think it was on Netflix. I was just looking here, and it doesn't seem to be there anymore. But I was familiar with it. It's got a milk carton, does it, for the thumbnail? Or am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And now I regret, because I would give it a go now if it was available on one of these services, but unfortunately it seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, don't let that kind of fool you. I mean, it does have that sort of that Stranger Things kind of thing going on, but I wouldn't let that deter you. It's actually really good. Justin, have you seen this one?
Yeah, I have seen it, and I kind of concur. It was. I imagine that anyone who went to it thinking it was going to be like Stranger Things would get a bit of a shock at the halfway mark. So I haven't seen it for a few years, but I do recall from what you said, it's kind of had that kind of Stephen King-esque feel to it, like that kind of beginning the first chapter of it, and then taking that kind of very dark sort of turn, sort of midway-ish point. So yeah, it's one I'd like to revisit at some point, but probably not a feel-good movie this summer, put it that way.
Okay, and wow, that's all my recently seen. On the next episode, I'm not going to have anything because that's just a lot of movies to catch up on. It just took me forever.
Well, thank you. I'll just rattle through a few things I've seen. We've been on a bit of a 90s thriller binge at the moment. I've been watching actually quite a few of them for the first time. I'd never seen Primal Fear or Double Jeopardy. And Double Jeopardy with is Ashley Judd. And Tommy Lee Jones is probably takes the biscuit so far for the most stupid, enjoyably stupid 90s thriller. And God knows there were some daft plot points and things in those thrillers, but it makes them all the more enjoyable. And we watched The Fugitive last night, which again I don't think I'd seen. I think I was working at cinema when it came out, but I don't think I actually saw it. So anyway, I've been having some fun with some of those, catching up with those. But horror-wise. And I kind of guess it's horror light is I do like a good werewolf movie, and Werewolves Within. I'd seen the director Josh Rubin's previous film Scare Me, which had like two people who were in a cabin telling each other scary stories, kind of in a kind of slightly anthology type way, and it had a kind of quirky sense of humor to it, and which I quite enjoyed. So Werewolves Within, I thought I'd give that a spin, although I'd heard some slightly dodgy things about it. And it's kind of a horror comedy, but unfortunately it's a horror comedy that's not really funny and it's not really scary, which is a bit of a handicap for a horror comedy. I know it's a difficult balance to get there. And I think the intent was there. It's just sometimes, when you're watching a film, and it may just be a personal preference when it comes to humour, that I didn't really find it that funny. It felt like everyone was trying too hard. Or the character, it's a bit like, The Beast Must Die.
Love that film.
So it's kind of a play on that slightly, in so much you have these group of people stuck in this mountain lodge during a snowstorm, and one of them is a werewolf, which is a great setup, fantastic. But because it's played as a bit of a comedy, is that the characters in it are very over the top. If you think kind of John Waters type characters, but not as funny. Everyone's really shrill. It's almost like everyone is really trying really hard to be funny, and the material doesn't support it. So overall, it's a bit of a miss for me. But I think your mileage may vary if you have a different sense of humour to me. Maybe I don't know, but I'm curious. Greg, have you seen that?
I have not. Although I'm not a big horror comedy guy, but I did like Scare Me, and so for that reason alone, I would give it a chance.
Yeah, I think it's worth a watch. It's well made. It looks great. I mean, it's based on a Ubisoft video game, which is apparently set in Middle Ages, werewolf game. Although this isn't set in Middle Ages, set in modern day, and it looks great. A lot of it's well acted. It just didn't gel for me for whatever reason. But what about you, Joseph and Erik?
No.
I've never heard of it. So
okay. Well, the other couple of other quick ones I've seen, and this is a completely different kettle of whatever, is and I do apologise if you can hear the cats wrestling in the background, but is a classic horror story which I watched on Netflix this week, which has been getting some decent press. It's an Italian horror movie. which kind of I won't try not to give too much away. I mean, it's basically as it sounds. It's a classic horror story, and it's about a group of people car sharing, and from one city to another, and they're driving in a van, and they get in an accident, and then they wake up in the camper van in the middle of the forest with no road nearby, but a very creepy looking house sort of close by. And it then goes into this kind of folk horror, which you think is going to just be basically a rerun of Midsummer, like an Italian version of Midsummer, but then it isn't quite that. And so I don't want to give too much away because part of the fun is in where it goes after that. But what's also quite funny about it is that one of the characters in it is a kind of budding filmmaker. And I just thought it's interesting as we're covering Murderock and like the Italian horror movie, and obviously the Italian horror movie by 1984 was kind of very much on the wane, and there's a character in this talking about why don't Italians love horror movies anymore? The Italians don't know how to make horror movies, that kind of thing. So there's a bit of kind of self-referential stuff going on in there as well. So yeah, classic horror story. It's on Netflix here in Spain at the moment. So I'm presuming it's probably everywhere. So has anyone seen that or
not yet?
I plan on it.
I've never heard of it. Sounds interesting.
Yes, it's on Netflix. I can confirm it's on Netflix here. Yes.
I don't want to give any more away about it because it does take it does take some turns that I wasn't expecting, because I did think it may just be an Italian rip-off of Midsummer, and it kind of is, but it isn't. So I'll say no more. But the last thing I was going to mention, which is a complete surprise to me, and I only actually saw this because it auto-played on YouTube after I was watching something else, and actually, cough, cough, Murderock. But it was I Desire, which is a TV vampire movie from 1982 starring David Norton in his follow-up role to American Werewolf in London, and directed by John Llewellyn Moxey, who obviously did amazing, as Amanda would be able to tell us, for hours and hours and hours. And in the fascinating detail, he did all kind of great 70s TV movies like Smash Up on Interstate 5 and Nightmare in Badham County. And so this has got like David Norton playing I think he's a law student working his way through school as a mortuary attendant, and his girlfriend works at a hospital, and people keep on turning up dead in the mortuary and looks like they've been sucked of all their blood. So it's kind of it's funny, not funny film. It's not played for laughs, but it's kind of played fairly lightly in the way like many horror TV movies are. But it's strange to see him in this kind of vampire movie straight after American Werewolf in London. And obviously he's called David Norton, but he's also playing a character called David in this, and he was also a character called David in American Werewolf in London. Yeah, if you're kind of a fan of early 80s horror and TV movies and David Norton, then it's well worth a spin. So as I say, I'd never even heard of it before today.
I've never heard of it either, but it sounds like he likes the name David.
I just wondered if they called him that to sort of try and... I did wonder if they were trying to sort of do it as almost a sequel to American Werewolf in London and just called him David, or he's got a different last name in the film. I mean, it's nowhere as good as American Werewolf in London, but it's pretty fun for like for its kind of slightly meager sort of limitations, I kind of guess, of the small screen when it comes to sex and violence. But it's it's pretty entertaining. So what about you, Erik and Greg? Is it one that I'd say I'd never even heard of it before today?
No, I have seen Double Jeopardy though, and I've watched Murderock.
Have you?
Yeah.
I especially loved in Double Jeopardy. You've got like Ashley Judd's character, who the whole point of the film is that she gets framed for killing her husband, and she doesn't really do it. But then she's told in prison that she can then kill, if she finds her husband again, she can kill him for real because she served her sentence. And she goes through committing a whole series of crimes on the way to doing that. So even if she doesn't get arrested for killing her husband by the end of the movie, she's committed petty theft, armed robbery, you name it, and she would have been locked away forever.
Yeah, that's not exactly how Double Jeopardy works. They just kind of they twisted that very, very noticeably into like a pretzel just to justify it. I love that movie. It's so awful. It's fun.
Well, it's Tommy Lee Jones phoning in his Chase the Baddie from Fugitive, isn't it? But yeah. Anyway, we're not on the 90s thriller show, but I kind of guess that probably means we should head on to the main feature and to the Big Apple via the Interior Studios in Rome. And Joseph, you're going to bring us back in on after the trailer? Have you got a trailer for us?
Yeah, we have a 50-second German teaser from an old VHS. It really plays more like a video for that song, which we will get to. But yes, I will bring us back in.
Tanz, das bedeutet für sie Leben. Oder Tod? Murderock, der tanzende Tod. Tanz. Dafür sind sie bereit, alles zu opfern.
The star of New York's Artistic Dance Center lies dead in the center's shower. A large hat pin protrudes from her bare breast. It has pierced her heart, killing her instantly. She will be the first of many dancers to die a similar death in a series of mysterious murders that will baffle New York's finest police and lead to speculation that another dancer at the center is responsible. Ambition and jealousy, the motive. So that was from the back of the Roadshow home video VHS release in Australia. And guys, Murderock, what a movie. The opening credits are this extended breakdancing scene. And if anyone doesn't know how to direct a breakdancing scene, it's Lucio Fulci. We then cut into another extended dance sequence. And this is where we will hear the first of Are the Streets to Blame, a song we will come to know more intimately as the movie progresses. It's not the only casualty of being overdone. The names Dick and Willie are uttered at least 30 times. They're uttered at least 30 times each. And when we're not traipsing this labyrinthine whodunit looking for clues, Fulci he seems most interested in the extended dance sequences featuring skin-tight leotards and leg warmers. I think Murderock, it works best as this kind of pastiche of cliches and amusing moments, more than it does as a full-fledged whodunit. The plot is so convoluted, and they absolutely go out of their way to make every single character look guilty except the one person who is obviously the killer. I mean, poor Margie, she was like shaping up to be one of my favorite characters with her sassy attitude and that magnificent hair. And then she goes and replicates the killer's MO for no other reason than to divert suspicion from the real killer. It's absolutely asinine, but I don't care because Murderock works, as I said, as a showcase of the absurd. I love the scene where the kids are being interviewed after a murder and they're all crying, and then suddenly they just wheel the corpse by on a stretcher. And how about that casual racism when I think it's Bart, the character's name, is he confesses to the murders and they deduce that he's just a lying asshole. And he's all like, this is lousy Puerto Ricans. And I'm like, what? I also love Candace's stylized dream sequences where everything is kind of done in these close-ups that betray the laws of physics, and there's this fog and mist and lots of soft focus. And I don't think my subconscious has ever been that detail-oriented when I was dreaming. The killer, spoiler alert, it turns out to be Candace, the dance teacher with an affinity for these Rocky-esque you can do it speeches. She kind of lost her chance at being a famous dancer years earlier in this hit and run. And she's now, she's forced to teach and I guess subsequently kill a class of young spandex hopefuls. I love how the hit and run, it may have killed her dancing career, but it gave her this impressive ability to orchestrate this decade-spanning murder revenge plot in such intricate detail. I mean, you also have the investigative detective cliche, which serves no real dramatic purpose outside of being a kind of a mouthpiece for the plot. The detective character even gets to explain the entire motive to the audience after the killer has been revealed. Excuse me. Lunch is coming up there. Sorry. It's all just 1980. Yeah. It's all just kind of like I mean, it's all just 1984 hogwash done through an Italian lens, and I mean that with the utmost respect, Greg. I love Murderock, and I think it's like the Friday the 13th Part 5, a new beginning of Italian dance slashers, however small that list may be. So, Greg, as our guest who hoisted this fine piece of filmmaking upon us, tell us why.
It's a fine piece of something, anyway. No, I really, I don't have guilty pleasures, but if I had them, this would be one of them. I'm kind of a sucker for that whole subgenre that you were talking about of dance-based horror. I mean, even I guess I would even include things like sorry, just blanked out again. I'm old. Things like Death Spa, even the aerobic style, like Aerobicide and
Did say Aerobicide? That's our standard joke every time Aerobicide is mentioned. Sorry, Greg.
Sorry, I'm behind that 8 ball there. But I think just the whole blending of somebody obviously saw Flashdance the year before, and they thought, why don't we make a Flashdance giallo, and it would seem to be a natural, and it's very surreal. But I honestly have to say that this is probably one of Fulci's better looking, better photographed movies. And it really, because just the way he uses a lot of high contrast, a lot of light and shadow. There's a lot of scenes where it's just, the screen is all black except for one little lit area. Things like the corridors and all that, whenever they're getting ready to close down the school, and you hear that weird computer voice that announces, it's like, you now have 5 minutes before lockdown, and it's so, like, what school does that? It exists in this weird dreamlike universe. But yeah, it's slick, it's cool, it's so unlike something like the New York Ripper, which uses a lot of the same exteriors, but New York Ripper is just for shock value probably more than anything. But this one is really stylish, and I guess it's probably the least gory horror movie I've ever seen Fulci do, which they could have definitely upped the gore quotient, but I really didn't mind.
Yeah, you'd think with Fulci directing, the tit stabbing would be more graphic, but you really only get like trickles of blood. You see the boobs more than you do the actual stabbing.
Yeah, that's actually probably where the only place the R rating or any kind of an adult rating would come from, is just occasional, very brief flashes of nudity.
Yeah, because I mean the rest of the film could be like a PG-13 kind of flash dance thing with all these dancers kind of gyrating around at every turn.
Although the one dancer that does that, like she does sort of a show in a small club, early on in the film. That scene in itself is, even though it doesn't feature nudity, was kind of an R-rated moment right by itself.
Oh yeah.
She's basically she's just totally humping the camera. It's an extremely sexual dance number. Yeah. I'm not complaining at all about that.
Oh yeah, I got another hetero on the show today.
Boo.
My 2 cents on that aspect is that the women in this are probably the most beautiful actresses I've seen in a Fulci movie, and considering he uses Catriona MacColl several times in other movies, who is gorgeous, this is right up there. I mean, Olga Karlatos is so beautiful, just flawless. So yeah, it's just watching her, with her eyes kind of bugging out and just being kind of weird and creepy for the whole movie. Is just that alone just makes it entertaining.
Absolutely. Erik, what did you think of Murderock?
Yeah, I really like Murderock, but I mean, part of it is just really terrific fun, and part of it is kind of run of the mill. Fulci, as you were saying, it probably exhausted himself in terms of gore with New York Ripper, because prior to this he'd done Manhattan Baby and Conquest, which were both indicated a new direction he was going in, which was toning down the gore. which, yeah, as he said, he'd gone overboard with to the extreme in New York Ripper. So this feels, as you were saying, it feels quite quaint in comparison to that string of gore epics he had, sort of starting with zombie flesh eaters and, you know, going up to New York Ripper. And, you know, this could easily, if it was reissued now in England, I would say it would get a 15 without any problems. You mentioned, Joseph, that brilliantly kind of rubbish breakdancing opening scene. Obviously shoehorned in because it was the dance craze of 1984. But when the main film starts, I love, what's the Paranoia's Coming Your Way song called again?
Are the Streets to Blame?
Yeah, Are the Streets to Blame. I love that song. I mean, it is naff, but I just love it. And I love the dance sequence that goes with it. You can tell that the dancers in that scene have been, you know, they've had the choreography thrown at them with little time to rehearse because they're slightly out of time, and it doesn't have the sheen or the polish of a dance sequence you'd get in like Flashdance or Footloose or Dirty Dancing, and I just love it for that reason, because it's just unpolished, and it's you know, it's one of my favorite moments in the film. Another dance sequence later, Greg, you were mentioning it, of course, with that poor girl in what looks like a swimsuit with big holes in it, and you can see her arse crack, and she's doing a routine that I suppose is supposed to riff on Flashdance. You know, it's kind of this erotic number, but again, it's quite stilted and poorly directed. Now, Fulci's not a bad director, but I don't think he knows how to direct a musical number as such, and it reminded me of the scene in Troll 2 where Holly does the dance in front of the mirror. It has that kind of effect, and that's not a complaint, that's a compliment, because I love that type of stuff. But once that scene is over, the dancing aspect sadly seems to disappear from the film for me, and I kind of miss it. More than gore, I miss dance sequences in this. I wanted more dancing throughout the film, and it kind of gets relegated from there on in, which is a shame. But the plot is probably slightly more logical than a lot of Fulci's films. It is still daft, obviously.
What?
No, it is still daft, but compared to something like City of the Living Dead.
Okay, well...
Or have you seen Manhattan Baby?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Well, there you go. Well,
I'm just talking about in his kind of real world thrillers, like New York Ripper.
Well, it's probably not as illogical as New York Ripper, even, I would say. I mean, it does... It is ludicrous.
This revenge plot,
it is like
the time she spent on
it. The Candace dream sequence. I'm dreaming of the man on the billboard who I have a secret past I've suppressed. Yeah, that's all nonsense. I will agree. I'll agree with you there. Yeah, so it is, you know, a bit silly, but they also mentioned that the character George was involved with a minor. That's an underage girl, not a person from My Bloody Valentine, but that kind of plot strand never resolves itself, and
apparently she died or something. Like the guy who was hired to dig up back info on him, which was Lucio Fulci, by the way. Like he tells her this, but it never goes anywhere. Yeah, so it would have been interesting to explore some more of George's past, but hey ho. Another oddity I found, and Greg, you mentioned this as well, is that Dance Academy, you know, the Arts for Living Centre, and that robotic voice that tells you when the centre is going to close, which makes it kind of futuristic sounding. It's like it reminds me of Mother in Alien, where it's counting down the destruction. It has that type of vibe. So as you said, what kind of high school or university or dance academy has that kind of robotic system, especially in 1984? Very strange. The murders in this one are a bit samey. I think maybe the horror aspect could have done with a bit of punching up. You don't get the creative murders of Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. If you look on Hysteria Lives, Justin's review site, every review ends with the body count for the film, and for this one there's like 5, the body count of 5, and every kill has the same 6 words: female killed with ornamental hatpin. So there's no variation to the kills. It's usually just somebody gasping and then getting chloroformed, and then afterwards we might see a hatpin and we might not see a hatpin, but that's about it. So there's a bit of variety there, might have helped. I love the Fame reference. Fame was a big part of my youth, the TV series that is back in the 80s. Olga Karlatos is given a speech that's a complete riff on Debbie Allen's famous "You want fame? Well, fame costs, and right here is where you start paying in sweat."
because she says she has to say something to her students like, you got to pay with anger, frustration, and sacrifice.
I love how seriously they take this whole dance thing. It's like your life depends on it. It's like, come on.
Within about 5 minutes of them watching their fellow student, being wheeled away on a gurney, she's got them back, working on that choreography again, and they're all just sobbing while they're I was just like, oh my God, you're a monster.
I know. One of the great things about Italian cinema is that the show must go on, even if it's just a bus trip around Barcelona in eyeball. Yeah, so I love Murderock. I don't think it's Fulci's best, but I do enjoy it. And it has, as you said, Joseph, it has two characters in it called Dick and Willie. I think they're Justin's favourite characters, because Justin is always going on about how much he loves Dick and Willie.
Erik.
What? It's true.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, to sum up, I love the... I would have liked to have seen more dancing, because I loved the dancing sequences in the earlier parts of the film. But overall, yeah, good fun movie.
Yeah, very popcorny, isn't it?
It is.
Justin, your thoughts, please.
Right. Well, I kind of concur pretty much with what everyone else has said. I mean, I just want to add a few things. It was the other thing that I did sort of made me laugh when I read back my review of it, and made me laugh this time was after the first murder, and you mentioned about how Olga Carlottas' character makes them all dance and says the show must go on, it's more important, something's more important than death or whatever. And it cuts them all like dancing, cantering like horses. And so she's made them do this kind of silly horse dance after their friend had died. So it's just kind of gloriously silly bits like that. And that's, I mean, again, we're talking about it's kind of a giallo. It's perverse in lots of different ways. It's giallo slasher mashup with no slasher movie murders, really. It's even more perverse given the fact that this could have played on TV without the nudity. So Fulci is going to cut out all the gore, but all this extra nudity. It's kind of thinking, what was he really going for? I mean, I find the New York Ripper kind of quite often a bit of a chore to watch, because I think it kind of tips into the sadism, which is, I find a bit much sometimes. And whereas I think I kind of think this would play better if he'd gone really more down the kind of slasher movie route, and like Erik was saying, had a bit more variety with the death scenes, and maybe had some gore gags in with the death scenes. I think it would have pepped up the movie quite a lot. Having said that, I mean, it's just this heady brew of ridiculousness, which is obviously what you want with a giallo, and certainly a lot less serious, I can guess, than a lot of Fulci's other movies in a lot of other ways. I mean, although films like The Beyond and City of the Living Dead and Zombie Flesh Eaters and all those movies have their kind of lighter moments in them, and touches of comedy, they're kind of still quite seriously intended kind of movies. And whether or not Fulci was really having fun with this, or it's a film that he didn't really want to make, I think we'll talk about some more about it in the background. But I mean, it's blessed by having Ray Lovelock in it, which any movie with Ray Lovelock is a good movie in my opinion. But the whole thing is the thing with the giallo for me is that everything needs to, you can have all the ridiculousness and everything like that, but really what you do need underneath the kind of the bones of a plot and something that brings it all together. If it still works without that, but it just kind of, at the end of the movie, you're scratching your head, or at least I was, and thinking, well, Olga Carlottas, how on earth, this kind of slightly half-assed psychic link almost she's got with the character for Ray Lovelock. And I don't know if that's because she saw him subconsciously or sort of subliminally in the dance studio, because he's obviously got some connection with one of the young dancers. And isn't he introduced at one point as George Glass, which is the fantasy boyfriend from the Brady Bunch?
I don't think it's George Glass, is he?
Was it not George Glass? I thought it was George Glass. Maybe it wasn't.
I could be wrong. Maybe I missed it.
But how she kind of, because obviously the whole end, we've already spoiled it, is that she was a dancer whose career was cut short because Ray Lovelock, presumably after drinking a pint of whiskey, crashed into her on his motorbike or whatever it was, and ended her dancing career. And she's somehow kind of their paths are crossed again. And there's no rhyme or reason why she started this killing spree when she did. It doesn't make any sense, because she hadn't even seen Ray Lovelock's character before the first murder. But then you've got other characters doing completely illogical things, like one of the blonde male dancers confessing to the murders to the police for no real reason, apart from maybe it was a joke. I don't know. Who goes around confessing murders to policemen for a jape? Very strange. But I mean, overall, it's a heady brew of 1970s giallo ridiculousness in all its glories, and that day glow 80s thing. It's kind of like, it's almost like they've, the welder in Flashdance. It's almost like they got her on board, Jennifer Beal, to kind of weld Flashdance to a giallo, and it doesn't quite stick, but it's a mighty mess, but it's a fun ride. So yeah, it's a film I do think genuinely that Fulci was doing this kind of volte-face on the gore, and I know he was kind of quite badly stung by the critical reaction to New York Ripper, but I think there could have been a middle ground there, because certainly when I first saw Murderock, I was hugely disappointed in it, thinking, it's a Lucio Fulci murder mystery movie set in 1984 at the tail end of the golden period of the slasher movie, and you literally have more blood in Murder, She Wrote. It didn't scan for me then. It still doesn't really scan for me now. It just seems a bit of a strange direction for him to go, and I think if he'd pepped up with a bit more gore and slightly bravado kind of gore set pieces, then it still could have had the fun light touch that it has, and not the kind of sadism of New York Ripper, but it still would have been a more memorable movie for me. But having said that, it's kind of, I enjoy it. It's a fun watch.
George Webb is his name according to IMDb.
Yeah, I would agree with some of the dissension points, but for me, I think my biggest gripe with this film, and really a lot of the gialli in general, is the investigative detective cliche, and it's always like a male character. I mean, you got a lot of interesting female characters here. For once, it would be kind of interesting if, like, one of the dancers kind of broke away from the path of the murderer and started investigating. But they kind of fall back on this detective character who's just kind of tangentially tied into the plot just to explain it. And I don't care. It's like, you've got all these other characters, interesting characters. Why not spend more time with them? I don't care about the detective angle in these films. And I think that's one of the things that kind of sinks this film for me. So, now background. I'm anything. I'm tongue-tied today. Anyone else have anything else to say on this film?
I just wanted to throw in, I had forgotten how just really almost kind of pointlessly amusing the detective is, because for starters, I've never seen a detective in a murder mystery so just completely disinterested. I mean, someone will bring him like a critical clue, and he'll be like, "What? It's just, what do you got? What? I'm busy."
I also did want to mention that I did love the scene where he bitch slaps that one guy like 4 times in the interrogation room. And the dude like said something like, "Yeah, I need a lawyer" or something. And then he kind of japed him. And so he just, rather than saying, "Hey, watch it," he just like smack, 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 smack.
Yeah, he even says like, I could break your arm and get away with it if I wanted to or something.
Yeah.
It's like, God damn it. And he seems to be very orally fixated. He's always like popping pistachios or something like that, and then also he's also chewing on his pencil. And I decided, well, this guy might have some deeper issues going on.
So one other little thing that kind of thought was quite a fun sort of perverse touch that Fulci kind of slipped in there was the scene where the babysitter's murdered. And the little girl played, is it Nicoletta Elmi, who was in Deep Red and Demons, sort of grown up.
Yeah.
And she photographs the killer murdering a babysitter, but in fact there was actually meant to be Dick, Claudio Casanelli, was turning up presumably to have his way with the babysitter at the arranged time. So presumably the idea was that the girl in leg braces upstairs with a zoom lens was going to be taking photos of them having sex. I think that was the inference, wasn't it?
Really? I didn't get that.
Well, that's what I thought, because the Dick Gibson, the Claudia Casanelli's character, turns up and just goes, "Oh, I was just coming to check on the babysitter," it's another one of those kind of, he was basically having sex with all the dancers, wasn't he?
Yeah, I must have missed that plot point. I had to go back and watch that and see if that holds up, but it sounds like it's probably the case.
Okay, well, backgrounds.
Well, I have a lot here, but Greg, do you have any background on this film?
I have some background and maybe some, I don't know, foreground as well. The only real background that I have read about this one was that it's was actually intended to be part of a musical Giallo trilogy that Fulci had planned. This was going to be the sort of the disco and dance version one, and then one was going to be based around blues or jazz, and then one was going to be I think called Killer Samba, which is I thought that was kind of interesting. I would have liked to have seen where that went, but I guess the movie didn't really go over that great, so he didn't go down that road anymore. But the flash forward here is that I got to thinking about this movie again, really just over the past 6 months or so, because there's a French synthwave type of band called Carpenter Brut that they put out an EP that they had a horror movie themed, like a slasher themed music video for each track, and they had a track on there called Les Pervs, which they used exclusively nothing but footage from Murderock as they repurposed it, recut it to make it look like a lot more exciting and a lot more action packed. But yeah, it was. I would strongly recommend checking that one out, because it's really it's edited in such a way where the dance elements and the murder elements are constantly like they're cut back and forth to the point where the pace of it is really cool. So and the track is cool if you like that kind of music. So just thought I'd throw that one in there.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I love synthwave stuff. I have to check that out. Anything else?
That's all I got of significance.
Okay, well, I'll read through this real quick. As far as I'm aware, Murderock received next to no VHS release stateside back in the day. The Australian Roadshow home video release was I think it was the one I first saw, which was this kind of nth generation dub that I got off Alt Horror back in the day. It may have gotten a regional rollout in 1989 under the title The Demon is Loose. I know in or around the Indianapolis area, according to one fan of the film, and Variety listed as getting distribution via BLC services in May of 1990 under that same title. I've seen the poster with The Demon is Loose title, and it has a somewhat misleading image of a woman tied to this kind of X cross with this demonic face in the sky just above her. And the tagline reads, demonic, depraved, diabolical, and beyond. But again, this must have been a small regional rollout, as I don't remember this hitting cinemas anywhere near here at the time, nor could I find much in the way of showtimes. No VHS release under the Demon is Loose title comes to memory either, nor any television showings in our part of the world. It sounds like the case of a film being lost and then found and then lost again, at least in the States, until its eventual DVD and Blu-ray releases. Let's see, one of its more this is good. One of its more infamous AKAs was Slashdance. But do not get that confused with the 1989 film with the same name. And interestingly enough, its Hungarian translation to Slashdance is actually, get this, Erik, Dirty Dancing.
I love it.
When you put in that translation, it says Dirty Dancing.
Cool.
Yeah, that's weird. As Greg said, it apparently was supposed to be part of a trilogy called Trilogia della Musica, and it would have been followed by two more gialli titled Killer Samba and The Thrilling Blues, but unfortunately Fulci fell ill at the time and was forced to stop working for more than 2 years, so they had to scrap the project. It appears to be shot in English and post-dubbed for the Italian markets, and I think we mentioned this sort of reversal of the norm on a commentary we recently did. Justin, didn't we? where they shoot in English and they have to dub it for the Italian markets?
Yeah, for like an international, with a view of an international sale, I can guess.
Yeah, I won't say what that commentary is, but yeah, we'll move on. In a 1989 publication of Gore Zone, they called it listless and a boneheaded knockoff of Flashdance. And yeah, I don't see that. I think, well, yeah, I guess it is. Well, I guess they're both boneheaded, but I prefer this kind of boneheaded. But that's all the background I have. Justin, Eric, you guys can fight for the rest.
I only have a few bits more. Do you want me to do them, Justin?
Please, before you do that, Eric, I just realised it wasn't Nicoletta Elmi, it was Silvia Colatini, who was also who was in Fulci's House by the Cemetery. So my apologies to both ladies
and their families for the distress you caused at this time. Yeah. Okay, so I've got two publications here giving me filming dates for Murderock. One said December 83 and January 84, and another one said January and February of 84. But they both say its first public screening was in April of 84, which meant it was a very quick turnaround from shooting to being in cinemas. The prog rock legend Keith Emerson did the score here, and he's responsible for writing the music and lyrics to The Wonderful Are the Streets to Blame and the other three songs we hear in the film. He sadly committed suicide in 2016 at the age of 71. But, in the 80s, he also provided the scores for Inferno, the Dario Argento movie, and for Michele Soave's The Church in 1988. And in another kind of sad story, Claudio Castanelli, who plays Dick Gibson, he'd been a regular in Italian genre cinema. He was in The Tempter, What Have They Done to Your Daughters, Rome 2033 for Fulci as well. He was filming the Sergio Martino movie Hands of Steel when he was killed in a helicopter crash on the set of that film in Arizona on July the 12th, 1985. And I don't know why I've written this, but in brackets I have, that was the day before Live Aid. So if you just want to date it. So yeah, he sadly died in his 40s, quite young. And that is all I have that has not been said already. So Justin, over to you.
Right. Well, I read that Fulci really hated the score.
Sacrilege.
He also, Fulci was kind of, if you've ever read anything about Fulci, you know that he had a certain reputation on set. He could be charming and also quite argumentative and sort of very hot-headed. But apparently he was kind of, he thought he was being forced into making a musical. So I don't know whether or not this was a kind of, not exactly a movie for hire, but he ended up making this movie. Because I don't know whether or not Conquest and other the movies Manhattan Baby, I don't think they probably set the box office alight. I don't know. But certainly he was coming off that kind of golden years period from the zombie flesh eaters, like 79 to 81, are those kind of times when he gained all that infamy and presumably the auteur status. But the film was released in Italy in over 84, 85, and it failed to even crack the top 100 of that year. So it goes to show it wasn't a big hit. So for a film that was kind of made, it was made to capitalise on the success of Flashdance, which I think was the number one film in Italy in 1983. But having said that, of course, again, if you even got a passing knowledge of Italian film, a genre film, you know that the Italians were fantastic at sort of they were the what's the studio that does the knockoffs of films? Asylum, yes. Well, they were the Asylum of the day, and I don't mean to put them down because I don't mean that in any bad way at all, but taking American hits and doing sort of Italian versions of them and sending them back to sort of England and America and Europe, it was their kind of speciality, from everything from thrillers to comedy, well, not necessarily comedies, but horror films especially. So it kind of just basically was another misstep on behalf of Fulci or whoever the backers of the movie were. And as we know from films like Prom Night, the taste in music and dance changes very, very quickly, doesn't it? Prom Night infamously made them misjudge disco's popularity. By the time it had come out, the disco interest in disco had waned, and so possibly with this, and God only knows what people in 1990, when people were breakdancing and all sorts of things like that, and what they would have thought of the kind of leg warmers.
Well, I would have loved it.
Well, I'm sure you would have done, but you would have been watching Dynamite Boogaloo, wouldn't you? And whatever it was, no, is it Dynamite Boogaloo? Breakout?
Electric Boogaloo.
You've been watching those back to back, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and eating Monster Munch.
Why not? Apparently the script was partially inspired by a 1969 crime novel by Joe Gorres called A Time of the Predators or Time of Predators. But the only aspect that was very loosely borrowed, was a subplot containing a female rape victim who seeks vengeance by pushing a hatpin into the hearts of would-be attackers. I think the scene with the babysitter before she's murdered, she's reading the novel, so Fulci had a kind of sly nod to that. I also thought, again, Fulci, I think for me as a director, has flashes of brilliance. And the scene I really like in this, I forgot to mention, was the scene where Uncle Carlotos is in that kind of futuristic control room and got the TV sets behind her, and all those images are flashing up of dancers and everything like that. The way it's cut together is quite masterful. But I kind of get the impression that Fulci's heart may not have been quite in this. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't his decision not to have all the gore in it. Who knows? So the film, ironically, given that it could have played, as Erik said, got a 15 certificate now, it didn't even get a video release in the UK, even despite Fulci huge success and huge infamy in the UK with his much banned horror movies of the late 70s and early 1980s. The only other thing, apparently the film, Joseph mentioned about Demon is Loose, apparently got some played in double bills with some in some places with The Exorcist 3, which may have explained why they went for the Demon is Loose sort of title, to sort of maybe tie it into that. The only review I found of it was by someone called Joe DeChick. And in the June 11th, 1990 edition of the Cincinnati Enquirer, he said, "There is no demon in Demon, only a serial killer shoving needles into the chests of nubile New York dance students. How bad is this theatre clearer? A dozen brave souls filed in for a Friday night showing, but only one stayed until the end. Guess who?" So, So the film sort of disappeared fairly quickly, but it's been good to see it released on high definition Blu-ray. So finally, if you are a fan of Italian horror movies and movies from this period, then it's definitely worth checking out. So so that's all the background I've got. I think that hasn't been covered.
Very good.
Excellent. So what was the consensus on the Facebook group?
Well, from 29 overall comments, Terry Carpenter from Facebook writes, Murderock was never highly looked upon from an overall standpoint in Fulci's filmography. However, right from my first watch, I dug the colorful high energy, the silly but fun aerobics, and those gorgeous shots of New York City. The kills aren't quite as impressive as Fulci's previous work, yet Murderock is a solid atmosphere brought on by the killer's stalking and the essential vibrant 80s ambience. A wonderful late-night snack most slasher and gialli fans should enjoy. On the other side of the coin, the Mike Justice from Instagram writes, "Feels like a made-for-TV mystery movie with a pretty forgettable mystery. I've probably seen it 3 to 4 times, and I still can't tell you who the killer is and why they kill." Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Listen on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and about 1 billion other podcatchers, both good and bad. If you enjoy the show and are willing and able to make a monetary contribution, head over to patreon.com/The Hysteria Continues, where you'll have access to over 100 non-slasher episodes for as little as $1, with more to come. Eyeliner card samples can be sent directly to Justin at thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com.
Hey, what?
I said eyeliner card samples can be sent directly to Justin at thehysteriacontinues@gmail.com. God, you never listen.
Oh, I thought it said Highlander card samples.
Eyeliner card samples.
Well, thank you. Yes, anything great for you, so I can sell for cat biscuits. Well, what people might ask, what could be worse than Lucio Fulci directing Flashdance? And I'll tell you what it is.
It's my joke of the week. It's so fantastic.
You're going to laugh your arse off with this one, Justin. Do you know who was originally cast to play the choreographer in Murderock? Ted Danson. Danson. Thank you very much.
That was good. I liked
Joseph liked it. And Justin, it's time for your compliment now.
Also, sorry, I just woke up. Yes, well, thank you, Erik, as ever. You never fail to disappoint. Or is that the right way around? Anyway, thank you for another class joke of the week, Erik. And we do have some feedback, I think, don't we?
Yes.
Do you want to go first, Erik?
Yes, I will. Okay, so this one is from Stephen Craig, and he says, hi, Hysteria continues. I've been listening to you guys for quite a while now and enjoy the show very much. I hope to see more top threes in the near future and more interviews with guests. I had a few questions I wanted to ask you guys. 1. Outside of the big franchises, which slasher, film, or giallo has it been the easiest and hardest to guess the killer? 2. I've heard in random episodes you guys talking about one-sheet posters you own or used to own. Are there any that stand out to you that you own? Any rare ones? I hope to see you guys review Terrified from 1964. Not the best, but a great atmosphere. In closing, stay safe out there. Keep those episodes coming, and many thanks for what you do. And that's from Stephen Craig. So, and Greg, feel free to chime in here. Which slasher film giallo outside of the big franchises has the easiest and hardest to guess killers? Now, I'm the wrong person to ask here because I can never guess killers correctly. Joseph, you are very good at guessing killers, so you might be best in a better position than me to answer this one.
Well, the easiest... I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on the easiest.
Yeah, because the one that immediately comes to my mind is Friday the 13th: A New Beginning, but that's part of the big franchises. So,
yeah, I would say something like Rush Week. My God, it's so obvious who the killer is in that film. That's probably the easiest to guess out of any film I've ever seen. But the hardest to guess would be Slaughter Studios from 2000 or 2001. Somewhere around that time, but that's probably the one film that I watched that I did not guess. Not only did I not guess the identity of the killer, but I was completely gobsmacked at the audacity of who it turned out to be, and it makes sense within the context of the film. You'll never see it coming, and it's a total surprise. So if you haven't seen that, it's kind of a silly throwback to the kind of Roger Corman style filmmaking, but it's done in a slasher movie format. But so it can be a little kind of grating in the dialogue, but the gore and the mystery is really good, and especially the reveal of the killer. I mean, I was completely surprised at that. So that's my answer.
Greg?
Just off the top of my head, because I'm actually pretty good at guessing who the killer is, but I'd say the one that actually surprised me, although I really kind of think it was cheated, but that would be Tenebrae. That I did not see that the double twist coming in that. But when you look at it logically, I'm just like, no, of course I didn't see it coming, because it's just kind of, you just thought, like, what would people expect the least? Okay, I'm just going to do this, and the hell with logic. But but as far as the easiest, that would have to be Mortuary.
Well, yeah.
He's not even wearing a disguise. So
I'd forgotten about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, those are just like, dashed off the top of my head there. But
Hatchet was quite easy to guess who the killer was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Justin?
Well, I was a total surprise when I found out who the killer was in Friday the 13th Part 3. But no, I'm trying to think of the ones that I have a kind of hit or miss thing with guessing the identity of the killer. I mean, I remember seeing Eyeball for the first time and not guessing who the killer was, although it seems fairly obvious. But yeah, so I mean, I do have a real hit or miss sort of thing. Sometimes I get aha moment, but I'm not like Joseph. I'm not laser sighted onto guessing who the killer is. So.
Okay, the second question then is talking about one-sheet posters. Are there any that stand out that you own? And I think, Justin, you used to be, anyway, a collector of the posters. Were you not?
I do. Well, I've kept a fair few. Well, fair few. I've kept some. Probably my favourite one is non-horror one. Was like the original mid-70s release of John Waters' Female Trouble, one sheet. The kind of pink, black and white one sheet with Divine and Cookie Mueller and one of the other girls on it. Is with all of the kind of the outraged press comments on it is one of my favourites. But yeah, I mean, I love, it's just, I used to collect the posters, but then at the end of the day, I felt like, well, they were just sitting on the box somewhere, not, gathering dust literally, and I have anywhere to store them or put them up. So sadly, I had to sell most of them. But I've kept a load. In fact, actually talking about Italian movies, I've got the Locandina's, which are the kind of long, thin Italian posters. I've still got quite a few of those framed waiting for when we finally move into our new place. So they will be going down a kind of very typical, like Dario Argento in Deep Red when he goes down the hallway, and we're talking about the not knowing who the killer is, but with all those paintings in that hallway.
You've got to take pictures of this when you get it set up.
Yes, I will do. So, but yeah, so that's my I mean, I love the artwork and stuff on those posters, but yeah, maybe one day if I win the lottery, maybe I'll buy them all back.
That's the thing, is that if you want to buy originals, they're quite pricey. I had an original Halloween 2. I think I mentioned this in a recent episode, that it just, there was just general wear and tear on it by the time I'd moved out of my home. I had a reproduction of Hellbound Hellraiser 2 as well on my wall, which I really liked. But I wasn't an avid collector of posters just because of the financial implications. And also I have nowhere to put them up, like you said. There was they would have just gathered dust in a folder or something.
What about you, Greg? Are you a poster collector?
I do have favorites. I don't really have a ton of them because again, I'm lacking in wall space. But I guess the obvious one, I guess, would be Alien, because I love the simplicity of it, just the minimalism of it. But I'd have to say that another, maybe even the clear winner, would be Magic from 1978. Just the having the little rhyme that is so creepy in and of itself, sort of dominating the top part of the frame, and then you have mostly black, just negative space, but then you just see the dummy just peeking up over the title. You don't even see the whole face; you just see it from the nose up. But it's one of those where it's just don't want to look at it too long because it's looking back at you. So, and I'm well known for writing a lot about that film and just how much it traumatized me as a child.
I'm trying to think if I've seen. I'm certainly very familiar with Magic, but familiar with the film, but I'm not sure if I've actually ever seen it. Does it stand up? I still like it a lot. It's a little bit. I mean, Richard Attenborough was the director, and so it's very classy and stylish. Anthony Hopkins is always good. It's a little melodramatic and kind of soapy, but at the same time, it's like, the whole psychological thriller aspect of it is still a lot of fun. And but that movie will never be as frightening as its promotional campaign. The teaser in which the dummy talks in it's Anthony Hopkins' voice doing the voice of the dummy, and it's just looking right at the camera, and it recites this extremely upsetting little rhyme. And I saw that when I was probably maybe 9 or 10 years old, and it scarred me for a good 10 or 20 years of my life. Kinder trauma.
Shameless plug here. There's a program on Shudder, by documentary. It's a short documentary by Rodney Asher, who did Room 237 and The Nightmare and a few of those. It's just a little one-off. It's only half an hour long, but it's based on how much that teaser trailer and the TV spot from Magic terrified and shaped the lives of different people. And I'm one of the 3 narrators of that that program, and they really, I mean, they took everything I talked about, the history of how it affected me, and they went and they cast little reenactments. There's an actress that plays my mother. There's two different actors that play me at like age 9 and at college age. Astounding what they did with just me, just sort of monologuing. So I'm really proud of that.
Man, I want to see this. That sounds awesome. Yeah.
It's called Primal Screen, as in movie screen. Shudder still has it, and I'm sure they'll keep it in circulation because it's an original. But that was so much fun, and Rod Asher is such a great. I mean, he can get material out of his interview subjects that like no one else. He just has a very conversational, relaxed style that he should be a therapist. He really does know how to get to the heart of what makes people scared.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely check that out. So is there anything else in Erik?
Yeah, he was just saying, I hope to see you guys review Terrified from 1964, which I don't think I've heard about before.
We've only mentioned it like 10,000 times,
have we?
Erik. It's the old black and white set in a ghost town's proto-slasher.
Okay. Yeah, of course it rings a bell.
Justin's mentioned it. Nathan's mentioned it.
Yeah, well, Justin mentions a lot of things.
Yeah, well, I'm very knowledgeable, Erik, as you know, about good music and various things. But
yeah, because you know lots about Toya.
Not that much. So who was that from again?
That was from Stephen Craig.
Stephen Craig. Well, thank you for writing in, Stephen. So I was distracted by Pussy. That was, good questions. And thank you for giving us some talking points. And thank you for listening to the show. Shall I? I've got one here, Joseph. A controversial one, should we say?
Okay.
No, I'm not going to. Well, I'm just going to preface this by saying we have a listener called Andreas who's written in, and we had to redact a couple. We're going to redact a couple of paragraphs from it, not because we don't agree with what Andreas has written. It's just unfortunately, how can I put this without sounding too like I'm going PM me hun. But it's basically, there's someone who said some not so nice things about our show, and we don't really want to give them any airtime. So Andreas is sticking up for us. But anyway, we won't dwell on that. But what I will get to the good stuff is saying, he says, "Hello, gentlemen. I became a patron near the end of last year, and have been really enjoying listening to your thoughts on non-slasher films, and found lots of films for my watch list with your top 3 films from different years' episodes. I also wanted to thank you all for keeping my spirits up on Christmas, as only a few of us were able to gather on the day, and listening to your festive episodes really cheered me up. I got these mental images now of him sat there with his family listening to our drunk cast or our festive. Anyway, maybe that wasn't the case. But so I recently ordered all the new Vinegar Syndrome slasher releases that featured Hysteria commentary tracks since the last halfway sale in 2020. Although I had to order Cemetery of Terror elsewhere as it sold out before I was able to order it, and didn't want to wait for repressing, I need to import Eyes of a Stranger and Somebody's Watching Me from Scream Factory at some point too. So I'll just redacting that bit. And again, Andreas, we do appreciate your kind words, but it says, not everyone will understand the appeal of Hysteria and a good sense of humour you four share, but it's exactly what draws me to the show. Whilst you guys are informative, it's also fun and has a very different, lively atmosphere to other commentary tracks. As everyone commonly states, it's like having 4 friends chat about a film and having a good time doing so. Erik mentioning Skegness in the I Still Know What You Did Last Summer commentary had me bursting out in laughter. Give me this stuff any day over a stuffy academic, especially when it comes to a subgenre like the slasher film, where I'm looking for people who appreciate and have fun with their qualities and shortcomings without being hyper-analytical and negative. I've noticed on recent episodes, Erik keeps making barbs about not being qualified to talk about things because he's not an academic, which has been making me laugh quite a lot. So, and much love and late night surrender, Andreas." So I don't know what late night surrender is, although I have an inkling.
I think Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you.
So, any other feedback?
I think that's it for this week.
So I'm going to guess we need to discuss what we are covering on the show next time. So I think this is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's when Joseph does the Nathan impression.
Yeah, Nathan's not here, so I guess I'm saddled with the unfortunate task of announcing his next winner. Let me see if I can do this in my best Nathan impression. We'll be discussing 1982's Last Dance, 1992 even, which is a slasher set in a serial a stripper bar. It's not the Sharon Stone movie, thankfully and unfortunately at the same time. Bye, y'all.
It's y'all's turn.
God, that was uncanny.
I'm sure it was. I'm not feeling my accents today. I'm a little disgusted with myself. But no, we'll be discussing 1992's Last Dance, which is a slasher set in a dancing bar. I don't really remember much about it, but I am kind of looking forward to revisiting.
Yeah, same here. Have you seen that, Erik?
I have. I've watched it. I watched it this morning, actually. And yes, it's not dissimilar to Murderock. Not dissimilar at all.
What about you, Greg? Have you had the pleasure?
I have not, but it's. But I'd like to hear you guys fill me in on it when the time comes.
Right. Well, yes. And if you get a good double bill with Bikini Island, which is basically the same movie on a different location, but they're both quite fun movies. So, well, thank you, Gregory, for coming on the show. And your kind of CV, as it were, is legendary, and it's you've done so many amazing things over the last few years. But is there anything you'd like to tell us that you're kind of up to at the moment?
Well, first, thank you so much for that. I do have a few things that I've been sort of sharing with people. One is I am my girlfriend Simone and I are co-producing a slate of films that are going to probably most of them are going to be shot in Canada or starting early next year. But one of them is actually already cut together and it's a creepypasta movie anthology for those who are into that sort of thing. It's the viral horror legends and various spooky urban legend type of stories. We got original authors and original filmmakers to come together and create an anthology. And it's took us about 3 years to get to the point where we can actually complete it, because we want to get we want to get a really good editor, and we've been sort of holding out to make sure we could pay them properly. And I made a rough cut, but I'm not a natural born editor, and I don't really have the sophisticated hardware for it. But so that's look for that, hopefully, to at least start circulating the trailer and all that maybe around the beginning of next year. And then I'm also I've got two web series going on the Joe Blow Horror YouTube channel. One of which is called Deconstructing, where I take horror classics and do a very deep dive and just come up with very similar to how you guys do background on things, but to actually have that accompanied by behind the scenes photos and talk about the legacy of different classic horror films. And then the other is called Horror Party, which is it's a little experiment with trying to come up with movies that are great for having a drinking game or something similar like that. Just a movie that is best experienced with a group of friends and various intoxicants. So I've been starting out on that series. It's doing pretty well, so I'm happy for that. And that's really the main stuff I've got on the horizon right now.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, exciting. It's
it's been fun.
Yeah, well, I definitely will check those out and encourage everyone to do likewise. And obviously, we do know about watching movies intoxicated. In fact, actually, our drunk cast is rapidly approaching us like the ghost of a hangover. So we'll be announcing what that will be. We haven't announced that yet, Joseph, have we?
No, that'll be announced in October because it is a Halloween-themed film.
Yes, indeed. So, well, thank you, Gregory. And it's been, well, let's make sure it isn't 10 years before you come on the show next time. Sorry, it's all cats. I'm sorry, I just think that it looks like cats just walked in with something in their mouth. So God knows what that is. It's all cats all the time. This is one of the things whenever I kind of I record in the evening over here because it's about coming up for 10:15 or so in the evening. It's when the cats are out at play, quite literally. So, but anyway, thank you, Gregory, for joining us. And like you say,
thank you very much.
We will make sure if you'll have us and you'll be happy to come back on. Discuss another classic movie, then definitely much sooner than 5 years next time. So
just say the word, and I'm there.
Excellent, good stuff. So, okay, well, do we have a song to play out with?
We do. Well, I thought we heard enough of it in the film, and we were going to hear enough of it in the intro and the trailers. So, I'm not going to play out with "Are the Streets to Blame?" Rather, I am going to mix it up with "Get Dancin'" by Discotex and his Sexalettes.
Excellent. What's that? Is that from the film?
No, it's surely you've heard this before. It's that do dat do dat do dat da get dancing, dancing. It's an old disco song.
You can picture that. You can imagine that they're actually saying Ted dancing.
Yeah, Ted dancing.
So I can see he's caught a mouse. He's walking around with a mouse in his mouth. Oh, what a gruesome way to end the show.
God, you live in a zoo. What's going on?
Well, I was going to see if I can pounce to try and save the mouse, but I don't think the mouse is alive anymore. What a sad way to end the show. Anyway, it's been so uplifting. So I don't think he killed it with an ornate hat pin. Okay, well, thank you, Greg. Again, always a pleasure. And, so join us next time. And I guess I'll say thank you to everyone's listened. And we'll catch you next time on Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to good people.
Bye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get dancing.
Get